This film is about a fat high school geek, who was bullied by his school colleagues and was never seen for 20 years. Out of the blue when he returned, he was the most wanted lethal CIA spy wanted for several crimes. The movie I'm going to recap to you today is called Central Intelligence, featuring Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart. We are taken 20 years back when Bob Stone is shown in a school bathroom, where he was picked by a group of bullies who grabbed him while he is naked in the shower and carried him in front of the whole school naked. We are then introduced to Calvin, aka Golden Jet. He is the most liked student with several posts at his school. That day he was given an award for being the student of the year and most likely to succeed award. While he gives his speech, Bob Stone was thrown into the crowd butt naked. Just then, Calvin quickly covers Bob with his jacket. While the whole school laughs at Bob, he ran out and was never heard or seen. Years later, Calvin is seen working while talking to Stephen, a coworker, who is seen taking pictures of his private parts. Calvin gets disappointed seeing Ethan, his old assistant, gets promoted. While at lunch with his wife, we realize Calvin and Maggie have been dating ever since high school. On the other hand, Ethan is celebrating his promotion, making Calvin get jealous. To distract Calvin, Maggie asks Calvin if he will attend the senior year reunion party. However, he says he doesn't want to go, seeing how disappointing his life is. Yet his wife is a successful partner at a law firm. Later that day in the office, Calvin goes through his Facebook account. Suddenly he receives a friend request from an unknown person named Bob Stone. As soon as he accepts the request, he received a phone call that scared him. Though it was Maggie calling, while they spoke, Calvin receives a message from Bob. In the message, Bob asks Calvin out for drinks, while on the other hand, Maggie wants them to go see a therapist. However, Calvin didn't want to see a therapist. So, Calvin takes up Bob's request to have some drinks. Later that evening, Calvin goes into a bar looking for Bob since he couldn't recognize Bob. Calvin got scared as soon as Bob surprisingly touched him. He even folded his fists ready to fight, scared of Bob's height and weight. To his surprise, Bob had lost a lot of weight and couldn't believe it. While having drinks, Lexi, a bartender, flirts with Bob. This surprises Calvin since Bob has always been rejected by women. Bob mentioned to Calvin he is a government constructor but was fired. While Bob went to get more drinks, a guy tries to take Bob's seat but he is stopped by Calvin. While they argued with Calvin, Bob comes back and asks the man to apologize to Calvin. Shortly, the man's crew shows up threatening Bob and Calvin. Calvin, scared for his life, he tries to get Bob to leave. But Bob asks for an apology from the men, who declined. In a short while, he beats the men in no time and disarms them. With Calvin excited about Bob's skill, he tells Bob they are boys. Bob hags Calvin with excitement. Just then, they head back to their old school where Bob gets back his old memories. Later we see Calvin trying to do a backflip like back in the day, but he fails, falling on his face. They both have a memorable day. Back at Calvin's place, Calvin tells Bob if he needs a favor he can just ask. With such an opportunity, Bob asks for help with his finances, that Calvin agrees to help. While Calvin and Bob look through the accounts, suddenly, Calvin was blocked for unauthorized access to the accounts. Since it seemed fishy, Bob spills a drink on the laptop, damaging it. Since it was too late for Bob to leave, he spends the night at Calvin's place. The next morning, Calvin has a cup of coffee while looking at Bob sleeping. Suddenly, he hears a knock on the door. To his surprise, Calvin opens the door to FBI agents who ask him about Bob. The FBI agents rush into the house after Calvin's response, only to find Bob gone. This surprises Calvin since he just saw Bob deeply asleep a few seconds back. Just then, Calvin is told about Bob being a wanted man for treason and countless murders. Later at work, the FBI agents use Calvin as bait to trap Bob. After a while, Calvin gets a call from Bob saying he wants to meet up in the building. Just then, the FBI storm out to look for him. Suddenly, Bob appears in Calvin's office, frightening him. Just then, Bob takes off Calvin's tie and attaches it to a fire sensor and burns it. He pulls out his gun, making Calvin run out and scream for help. With Calvin screaming like a girl, the FBI attack from all sides of the building, causing Bob to take Calvin hostage. Later we see Calvin fire a gun towards an FBI agent by mistake, making him an accomplice to Bob. With nowhere to escape, Bob decides to jump through the window, falling down into a dummy balloon. Calvin being shot at, he is forced to drive off with Bob to an abandoned warehouse. On arrival, Calvin asks Bob to return him home and doesn't want to be part of what's going on. Bob then explains how his partner Phil was killed and he was framed for it by a man called Black Badger. Shortly, Larry, a contract killer, attacks Bob. Bob throws a metal bar at Larry's motorbike, tripping Larry down. Calvin picks up the bike, riding off away from Bob. He later calls Maggie asking her to not go home but meet at the therapist office. Later that day, while going into the office, a car drives by with Agent Pamela, who asks Calvin to get in. Agent Pamela tells Calvin a story of Bob being the Black Badger and how he killed his partner Phil. He is also told about Bob stealing satellite encryption codes. With all this confusion, Calvin is given a panic button and told to use it when he sees Bob. Calvin enters the therapy room to find Bob as his therapist. He panics but had to stay calm to not alarm Maggie. With all what was happening, Bob as their therapist asks Calvin to role play with Bob being Maggie. This nags Calvin since he knew who Bob really was. Later, Maggie is seen walking out because Calvin wasn't taking therapy seriously. With Maggie gone, Bob talks to Calvin and convinces him to give him till the end of the night to prove he is not the Black Badger. Later that day in the financial district in Baltimore, Calvin takes Bob to his high school bully Trevor, who is a certified banking official and the only person they knew who could access the accounts. Trevor still made fun of Bob's past school incident. This made Bob storm out of Trevor's office very angry. Just then, Trevor gives Calvin the transaction numbers, while on the other hand, Pamela calls Calvin and threatens him to arrest Maggie. With no option, Calvin gives up Bob to the FBI and they're both arrested. While Bob was in for questioning, Calvin felt guilty and later he is seen pointing a gun at FBI agents. He goes to the interrogating room freeing Bob. They both fight CIA agents, steal a plane and fly to Boston to the coordinates they got from Trevor. While at the park, Bob splits up with Calvin asking Calvin to stay back while he goes down to the parking lot. Shortly, Calvin sees Pamela and runs to inform Bob about it, but Calvin finds Bob with a group of mafias claiming he is the Black Badger. With Calvin's interruption, Bob shoots Calvin to prove he is the Black Badger. To our surprise, we see Phil, Bob's assumed dead partner, claiming to be the Black Badger. Calvin wakes up to see Bob and Phil both arguing about being the Black Badger. After a short while, Agent Pamela storms in with a team of agents. With people shooting guns, Calvin sees the codes and runs to get them. He is chased with a car. But to his surprise, Bob saves him by knocking over the car that chased him. Calvin tells Bob to leave him alone since he had shot him. He then runs out to the park. Calvin is later seen pointing a gun at both Phil and Bob while they fought. With not knowing who to trust, Calvin shoots Bob in the butt. Phil later admits to Calvin that he is the Black Badger, and narrates to him how he faked his death. Calvin, on gunpoint, backflips to distract Phil. Just then, Bob attacks Phil. He rips out his throat and throws him off the bridge. In the next scene, Bob and Calvin fly to the reunion. Calvin makes up with Maggie. In the dance floor, Bob punches Steve and takes off his clothes, showing everyone he isn't a coward anymore. Later, Bob kisses his high school crush Darla. At the end of the movie, Calvin is seen with Maggie while she is pregnant. He leaves home for his first day at the CIA agency. Bob congratulates him and gives him back his golden jet jacket.